Hi, this is Zibby Owens, and you're listening to Totally Booked with Zibby, formerly Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. In my daily show, I interview today's latest best-selling, buzziest, or underrated authors and story creators whose work I think is worth your time. As a bookstore owner, publisher, author, and obviously podcaster, I get a comprehensive look at everything that's coming out and spend my time curating the best books so you don't have to. Stay in the know, get insider insights, and connect with guests like I do every single day. For more information, go to zibbymedia.com and follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens. Jane Costello is the author of It's Getting Hot in Here, a novel. This is one of the books we are publishing from Zibby Publishing, formerly called Zibby Books. I am so obsessed with this book. It is funny and real and poignant and all the things that I look for in a great read. You have to follow Jane on social because her social channel, I think it's at Jane Costello, is just a love letter to women and why 40-year-old women are still where it's at. And anyway, she's just amazing and funny, which I love. Jane Costello is a best-selling British novelist whose romantic comedies have sold over 1 million copies in the UK. Her novel, You, Me, Everything, published under the pseudonym Catherine Isaac, has been translated into 26 languages. She lives in Liverpool, England, with her husband and 3 sons. Again, Jane Costello, It's Getting Hot in Here. Welcome, Jane. Thank you so much for coming on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books to discuss It's Getting Hot in Here, your novel, which, as you know, we are publishing in the US, and I am obsessed with in every way, and so excited to talk to you.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. And yeah, I cannot describe how excited I am about the forthcoming publication, which is just, it's just a ride already. It's just fantastic. So
this is really unique for us because it has come out already in the UK. So we already have like a peek at what happened, and it's almost like we can go back in the time machine or something and like see or a fast forward or whatever. So I want to hear how that's been, but first I want you to tell everybody what It's Getting Hot in Here is about and like the backstory of it, and I want the whole story.
Okay, well, it's a romantic comedy about a woman in her 40s. And my leading lady is called Lisa Darling. And she's a single mum of 2, one of whom is, I think it's fair to say, a delightfully difficult teenager.
Aren't they all?
Absolutely, absolutely. Endless material on that front I had. But yeah, she's a TV executive. She's perimenopausal. She is a member of the school PTA and she's been divorced twice, and she has the to-do list from hell. And we meet her at the start of the book when she's supporting her best friend and colleague, Rose, through breast cancer treatment. And Rose's replacement has sort of swept in from the Los Angeles office. And he's a guy called Zach Russo. And he's sort of sent hearts aflutter across the office. But Lisa takes an instant dislike to him because she's convinced he wants Rose's job permanently, and B, because he puts the brakes on a project that she's been working on for months and months. So she is very unhappy about that. And well, fireworks ensue. And a lot of chemistry. And all of this chemistry culminates in this steamy and ill-advised clinch that she has with him after they've both had one too many drinks after work. And yeah, that's sort of, the beginning of what it all happened. So it is a rom-com, very much a rom-com. Hopefully it'll make you laugh. But I think it's also a portrait of what it's like to be a midlife woman in the 21st century. Yeah, and all the things we have to juggle and deal with. So, yeah.
Well, I love that you are like the poster child for women in their 40s and the fact that there is room for love and romance and that we are not just moms or we are not just taking care of the older generation. We are not just like, you just have, you're rebranding this whole age group and you are like the perfect, most glamorous brilliant person to do it. I love it. Like, let you be the one to do a rebrand. I appreciate it.
Well, I really, honestly, I wanted this to be a celebration of midlife. Obviously, we have to we have a load of things thrown at us, and that's very much reflected in the book. She does not have an easy time of it. But I just felt this urge to write a book that was funny and optimistic and just a celebration of actually a time in your life when you've probably we've all built up these lifelong friendships. We've got a bit of experience under our belt, and actually, yes, as you say, there's still time for love. And there's I don't know what to say, but it is a bit steamy, the book as well. And I sort of deliberately did that because I thought, there's room for this. There's room for this. And it's important that is not just something that's associated with women who are in their 20s, who, really had just looking for Mr. Right for the first time in their lives. And yeah, so very much a celebration of midlife.
But do you think women in their 20s are as tired as we are?
Unquestionably not. Unquestionably not. But hey ho.
I mean, Lisa's to-do list, as I know I've told you, but Kathleen, who is our executive editor at Zibby Books, she started reading page 1 and was like, oh my God, Zibby, like, this is you have to read this immediately. And any woman or parent or whatever will just feel so seen right away by like the endless stuff and how doing all this stuff, it's like we have to do it while on ice skates or something, right? It's like there with like undulations in the rake, like everything is against us, and yet there's more and more we have to hold. So
absolutely, you feel like you're drowning in it sometimes, and I think especially when I've got 3 kids. I know you've got
4. I have 4.
What? Okay. Oh my gosh, hats off.
I mean,
but yeah,
it's that extra kid. He gets us a hats off.
It's just endless, isn't it? And so you have these to-do lists that's full of really important stuff. But then there's so many items on there that are things like buy socks or, organize such and such for I don't know, an art project next week, and it's just endless, the amount of things. Schools are very demanding, I think, these days. And, when you're juggling that with a career and all kinds of other things, especially as I've been a single parent for a long time in my life, and it's really tough when you're on your own doing all that. It really is. But somehow we manage and still celebrate our friendships, and we still manage to have fun throughout the whole thing. So that's what I really wanted the book to, I wanted it to
that
be funny.
Absolutely comes through. Yes, absolutely. Wait, so how old are your kids now?
So my eldest is 19, and then I've got a 16-year-old and an 11-year-old as well, all boys. So mine is a busy, let's say very noisy household.
And this is none of my business, but were you divorced twice like Lisa? Divorced twice?
No. Clearly
Okay.
once. No, absolutely. No, I was divorced once, but I deliberately made that. I just wanted her to be divorced twice because the thing about Lisa is she is really, really good at certain parts of her life. She's fantastic at work. She's an absolute killer in those meetings. She takes no nonsense from anybody. But in parts of her personal life, the wheels have just come off, and she's made some just made some bad decisions, really. And I think certainly in her marriages, you can see she's sort of a romantic. She fell in love really young and got married quickly, and it ended equally quickly. But then was convinced that the guy she married and had kids with would be the one. And he made the decision to leave, and she feels almost embarrassed about the twice divorce thing, as if it's something people in Hollywood do, but not in real life. And I think that's very much kind of made her reluctant to ever. And she's sort of convinced herself, this is a time in my life I'm never having my fingers burnt ever again. But so the wheels come off in certain parts of her life. So certainly with the dealing with the teenager, you can see she is a really good mum at heart, but teenagers can be challenging, and he I made sure that I did not hold back on that front. I did not want to rose tint any of that. And despite the fact that you sort of know he's a good kid deep down, or that's what I wanted him to,
Yes, you get that.
he's a good kid and he's going to come out the other side of it, but it's not fun. It really isn't fun, that sort of thing. So yeah, she's a kind of multifaceted character, I would say.
I know. It's like the fact that when kids become teenagers, it's like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, like the people, the sweet, loving, cuddly things you can always count on become like completely different animals. It's like we once tried to rescue this puppy and I was like, oh my gosh, I've like literally brought a wild animal into my home. Like like why did I do this? But that was a choice. Like this is just one more thing that happens. And I mean, I love my teenagers. They're amazing, but it's the unpredictability of all of it. It's like nothing. Like even the people you live with completely can change. It's like, what next?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And the mortality like you have with her friend, like that in the middle of all this, we're also being like, oh yeah, right, and we're all gonna die, and like, wait, maybe my best friend is dying, and like, I have to hold that too. I mean, that's a lot.
Yeah, but I think we all sort of, by the time you've reached a certain, I mean, this is a book that couldn't have been written about a woman in her 20s. It's very much a woman in midlife, and you sort of, by the time you've built up so many friendships like you do when you've reached this age, we know people who terrible things have happened to, whether it's, not necessarily illness, but, we've been through a lot of stuff and supported friends, hopefully. And, so I just really wanted it to be a reflection of that.
I feel like if anyone is going to come up with a clever name for midlife, it should be you, Jane. So if you could help us, you're on the front lines of the rebrand, and I love that. But midlife is just such an unsexy name for this time. Let's find a new name. Could you do that on the side?
Isn't it? Although it's better than middle-aged. To me, I used to think middle-aged just sounded, I don't know. Well,
Yes.
if you told me I'd be writing a book about a middle-aged woman, it just sounds so unglamorous.
I know.
And yet I'm afraid that's what we are.
I know. I know.
I don't feel the really silly thing is, and I'm sure we all feel the same. Our bodies have changed. We've got a lot of history under our belt, but I feel fundamentally the same as I did when I was 25.
Yes.
My personality and core is exactly the same. And I think that's one of the things that sort of takes you by surprise, isn't it? So
I literally said that in a meeting yesterday. We were talking about like marketing to midlife women, and I'm like, but we can't say that. I was like, because I feel like I'm 28.
yeah, exactly.
Like no one identifies, even if you know it logically. Like I don't know. It just doesn't sound right. But
it doesn't. It doesn't. It sounds like that'll happen when I'm finally a grown up. No, that's not going to happen yet.
Okay,
so.
on the side, come up with a better name or term.
Okay, I'll do that. I'll work on that.
Okay, thank you. But you have been writing throughout, right? This is not your first rodeo here. You've written like a zillion books, and you've been writing for years, and have two different pen names because you have so many books you can't even fit it into one name. I mean, it's like shameful to the rest of us. And you've like taken the reader through, in the same vein as like a, Sophie Kinsella, Marion Keyes, like, your characters are growing with us as we're all aging, and you like nail each time frame rather. So just tell me more about how you got started writing, and sort of like your outlook on all of that when you were younger, how it's shifted, and some of the successes that you had back then, and all of that.
Okay. Oh my gosh.
That was a big question, but
yeah. Okay. Well, like all authors, I loved reading. I just loved reading as a little girl. And I always say that stemmed from the fact that when I was growing up, my mum had been involved in a car accident before I was born. So she was in a wheelchair, fully wheelchair bound. And so she and I, when I was a little girl, really were sort of housebound together. And we would read all day long. And I just loved it. I just became a massive reader from when I was really, really young. And, I really enjoyed writing. You know what it's like when you're sort of young, you think saying I want to be an author feels like saying I want to be a pop star. I was far too sensible to sort of ever imagine that that was within my grasp. So I did what I thought was the next best thing, and I became a journalist. And I really enjoyed journalism, worked in newspapers. I was the editor of the local newspaper in Liverpool. And it was while I was on maternity leave with my eldest son, who's now 19, that I thought, I've got to, now's the time.
Hmm.
Maternity leave didn't quite leave this amount of free time that I ever imagined it would, to be honest. But I just knew I had to, take the opportunity then and really actually do something about this ambition. So I wrote the first three chapters. Oh, well, I got the idea for my first book, which was called Bridesmaids. It was before the film, by the way. It was an original idea. And I got the idea 19 years ago as I was sitting in a pew at a friend's wedding. I saw her and her, bridesmaids walk down the aisle, and I thought, has anybody ever written a rom-com called Bridesmaids? And but decided then I was going to go home. And if nobody had, I thought, I've got to do this. So anyway, sure enough, I wrote the first three chapters and a synopsis, sent it off to an agent, and he took me on, basically. And that was it. And that was the start of what would then become a career, a sort of decade-long career at the time, writing romantic comedy, as Jane Costello. I was a top 10 bestseller in the UK. Unlike It's Getting Hot in Here, they were very much, women in their 20s, finding Mr. Right for the first time, with lots of humour in it, which, as you've probably guessed, is one of my trademarks. And then I sort of I got to my ninth book, and I was in my 40s myself, and I thought, I can't realistically write something relatable about that ship has sailed, about a woman who's in her 20s. And it was then that my career took this sort of different direction. And I wrote my first book as Catherine Isaac. And that book was called You Me Everything. That has been published in the US. The others haven't. But yeah, that did really well and sort of sold all over the world. And it was a slightly different direction, in the sense that it was very much still a love story, but it dealt with some sort of tougher themes, I suppose. That book was about a woman who takes her 10-year-old son on a road trip to the south of France to spend the summer with his estranged father. And the reason she's doing that is because she's discovered there is Huntington's disease in the family. And so it's not a book about a disease, it's a love story, but obviously we're dealing with themes like that. It's not a rom-com, hence the fact that we had the different name. And really, it was only sort of last year that I just felt this urge, having kind of, reached my late 40s myself, to go back to writing the rom-coms. Because all those years when I was writing as Catherine Isaac, every book event I went to in the UK, people were coming up to me saying, when are you going to write another Jane Costello? We're desperate for another one. And I sort of batted it away for ages until I sort of hit on this idea that I just don't write it about a woman in her 20s anymore. I now write it about a woman in her 40s. And the result is it's getting hot in here. That felt like a really long answer to your question. But
No, honestly, I just want to like put my feet up on the desk and kick back and listen to more stories. No, I'm like, please.
I'll take a breath now.
No, don't take a breath. Keep entertaining me. I love this story. I mean, it's this true success story, and it shows you can make a career of writing, and it can be a dream but also a reality. And I find that you switched names very interesting and also a bit confusing. Like, how do you feel about that now? Like, because I feel like Jane Costello, like, isn't she allowed to have range? You know?
Yeah. To be honest, with hindsight, I mean, there have been a few times where, certainly it took some getting used to at the time, because
Like, did they call you Catherine on book tour and
yes,
stuff?
and I'd be sort of looking blankly and then go, oh yes,
But
me.
your name is Jane Costello, right? Your real name?
Is my surname is I'm Jane, but my surname is Catherine. Sorry, my middle name is Catherine,
Got it.
and my son's name is Isaac. So that was totally,
Oh, got
yeah.
it.
But yes, I mean, yes, it could have been done either way, I guess, is the answer.
Well, it all
But
worked out. I mean,
yeah, it all worked out fine. But yeah, it does get confusing. So it's certainly in the UK where I'm very much known as Jane Costello, I
mhm.
would say. I'd say, that was the kind of bigger name that I had. But yeah, I mean, like I say, You Me Everything was, did really well. And there was a movie in the offing at one point until we had the small matter of a pandemic, which was a bit of a shame. But yeah, it was a really interesting time in my career. And yeah.
So why were the Jane Costello books, to refer to you now as like an object, but whatever, like why were those never in the US? Like I feel like I would have eaten those up in my 20s.
Well, I didn't have the same agent at the time. It was like, I don't know whether it was just one of those publishing things. I don't
Yep.
know. But I think yeah, I mean, they did so well here.
Yeah.
Um, but I think at the time, you know what publishing's like. It goes in fashions, doesn't it? And
Mhm.
at the time, everyone was, although they were doing really well in the UK. I think it was all about 50 Shades of Grey. Everyone was like the
Oh.
big thing. Do you know what I mean? And everybody was after that sort of thing. And then it was vampires after. And so, but yeah, so it's just one of those weird, but I don't believe my agent ever at the time ever offered it out to anybody in the US. So it was just we just very much focused on the UK really. It was one of
Yeah.
those things. And it was only, when I sort of moved agents and then wrote You Me Everything that really did. I mean, that was sold into 26 countries. So it
Oh
was
my gosh.
I know. That was just like the most amazing time for me because although I'd been published in the odd country, nothing like that, So it did sort of open up this whole other chapter. But it was for no other reason than weird publishing, reasons basically, rather than
Yeah.
it being necessarily being a book that wouldn't work over there, I would say.
Well, I mean, we're now going to benefit from that lapse because I am so honored to be bringing it over, and your voice is so amazing. I love how you write. So, what are you working on now? Because I have a glimmer, and you put a little bit in. Talk about
Yeah.
that next book.
Well, I'm so enjoying it. I've never written a sequel or a follow-up or anything like that to any of my books before because I always sort of thought, well, once you've got, if you're writing in a romance genre, once you've got them together, I don't want to pull them apart again and undo things in a sort of unnatural way. So I've always resisted that. But somebody mentioned, now I've never seen Bridgerton, but apparently the sort of way they do it is they focus on it's all set in the same world, but they focus on one character in one episode and then a different character in another episode and then another one. And so this we've sort of put onto something really. And this is what I'm doing. And so I'm writing a follow-up. It's not quite a sequel because it's sort of different characters but set in the same world. And it's called 40 Love. And as you might have guessed, it's about tennis, but anybody who is not even slightly interested in tennis, I would hope would be interested in it because it's a love story and it's about somebody sort of rediscovering, their love of sport and camaraderie and finding this whole outlet in their life that they never imagined they'd have in their 40s.
Well, I just love this. And the fact that I tried to publish a book called 40 Love is just so perfect that now you're coming along and doing it and you're going to do a much better job. And my book was pretty terrible. And,
Oh,
you know,
I can't believe that.
no, it's fine. It's fine. I tried to make it a little more literary. I didn't make it funny in retrospect, whatever. And I tried to write it as a memoir, but I had to leave a lot out. So, whatever. It wasn't meant to be for me. But clearly, like, the universe has put 40 Love in my life. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Oh.
because of all the people, now it's you writing. It's perfect. It's just totally perfect. Wait, so it's a character from It's Getting Hot in Here?
Well, it's a new character, but
Okay.
it's actually Jeff's sister. So Jeff,
Oh.
and she becomes one of the friends, basically.
Oh, that's awesome.
And yeah, I'm loving it. I'm loving it. But I am determined to write it for anybody, even if they're not even remotely interested in tennis, because I just think, I mean, I love tennis myself. I think am I right in saying you
Yes.
are?
I'm like
Yes,
it.
indeed. You
Yes.
have some tennis connections yourself. But yes, but I'm not, it's not a tennis book. It's just that's sort of one of the key themes, if you know what I mean. It's a book
Yes.
about yeah, it's another celebration of a midlife woman.
I love it. Oh my gosh, I cannot wait to read that. I'm like chomping at the bit. The little section I read is so good. I mean, you're so
Oh,
good.
good.
It's just really amazing. Just a question on process. Like, how are you doing all of these? Like, you obviously have the whole story arc down, the pacing, the timing. Like, how much is done ahead and how much is in the moment? And like, what are any secrets that we can all benefit from?
Okay. Well, I've always been a planner, and think I've become even more of a planner over the years because I just find that if I don't plan things out properly, then I just end up sort of undoing things, and it's all really messy. And to be honest, even when you plan a book, it's messy and difficult, because you get loads of ideas and you realize that some things don't work. But yeah, I spend a long time, I would say, trying to make sure that every storyline makes sense, is building excitement, is making the pages turn, is saying something interesting. And yeah, I do make sure I do that whole thing before I sit down and write chapter one, because it's just sort of, that's just my way of doing it. I'm sort of in awe of authors who can just sit down at a computer and see where it takes them. But I've tried it and it just definitely wouldn't work for me. And in terms of the process, in terms of my sort of, routine, I've become sort of quite strict with myself over the years, I would say. So my mornings are only for writing and nothing else. I don't answer emails, I don't do social media. If anyone phones, it goes unanswered. This is what I do. And I write in sort of hour-long chunks. So I use a focus app and I just refuse to move from my screen, no matter what, and do it for an hour and then take a little break and then do another hour. And I do that 4 times. And once I've done that, I sort of allow myself to take a breath and, move on to all the other stuff, of which you'll know there's multiple these days. When I first started, there was basically Twitter and Facebook, and that was it. But it's become this whole, authors have got to be far more switched on and do a bit of everything these days. So,
Yes. Relentless. Uh,
yes, it is.
so, and you do that 5 days a week, like Monday to
Yeah.
Friday?
Yes, yeah. And I'll be honest, the writing is my favorite bit. Social media is great. It's lovely to be able to connect with readers, and I have a newsletter as well, which I enjoy writing. But when the right certainly when the writing's going well,
Yes.
we all have off days. And your book, Blank, by the way, just brought me out. There were, oh my God, I loved it so much. But as a fellow
Aw.
writer, oh God, we all know that pain of not being able to come up with an idea. We all know that. Yeah, gosh, it described that feeling so well. But yeah, but that's partly why I find the planning really, really helps me, because there really is nothing worse when you just feel like you don't have the answer. And despite the fact that this will be the book I'm writing at the moment is my 16th novel, I still have that stupid thing at the beginning of writing a book where I go, this will be the one where I forget how to do it, or
Mhm.
this will be the terrible one. This is bound to be the one that won't work, or, you know, certainly at the beginning, you'll know. At the beginning of starting a book is really hard, isn't it?
Yes.
And it feels a bit clunky, and the characters don't feel very real, and you sort of take a bit of warming up, I would say. But then once that happens and you're away and that magic happens where it catches fire, there's nothing better.
Totally agree. Oh my gosh. Well, we are so honored to be publishing. It's getting hot in here. I am so excited. I want to just like listen to you talk all day. Soak up all your advice and experience. And anyway, thank you, Jane. Thank you for everything. And I can't wait to read everything. I can't wait for people to discover your book and laugh and see themselves and escape themselves and all the things that a good book does. So thank you so much.
Oh, Zibby, thank you. This has been brilliant. And I can't wait till it comes out. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for listening to Totally Booked with Zibby, formerly Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. If you loved the show, tell a friend, leave a review, follow me on Instagram @ZibbyOwens, and spread the word. Thanks so much. Oh, and buy the books.